Did you know that ignoring a simple IRS notice could cost you tens of thousands of dollars more than it needed to? Today, I'm going to talk about the snowball effects of tax problems and why acting early can save you money when it comes to resolving IRS disputes. Hi, I'm Andrew Bosserman. I'm a former IRS agent and current tax attorney and founder of Boss Tax Law. In this video, I'm going to describe why it pays to respond to the IRS early and also why it pays to get a tax attorney involved early when resolving your case. Generally, at the very beginning, whenever the IRS is proposing to assess additional tax or thinks there's a problem with your return, they're going to send you an initial notice in the mail. So this initial notice could be some sort of reporting discrepancy based on the information documents they have on file. It looks like maybe you have some unreported income, or it could actually be an audit notice. And that's more likely if you have a small business and the IRS thinks there's issues with the return. At this stage, if you're just receiving a notice that's some sort of document matching issue, generally, if you respond and provide documentation why the IRS is incorrect, this is a fairly simple and relatively cheap to fix, a few $1,000s normally for a tax attorney, maybe less if you have your CPA handle it or if you try to handle it yourself. If you have to go through a full-blown audit, again, it's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than having to pay a tax attorney years down the line to go to tax court for you. So if you received an audit notice, you're going to have to deal with a more involved IRS look at your return. They're generally going to come out to your home or place of business. They're going to review your records in depth, analyze bank deposits, look at invoices, receipts, documentation. It's going to be a closer look at your return, and it's going to cost you time in terms of preparation, but also you're likely going to want to have a tax attorney or CPA represent you. And as a former IRS agent, I'm very comfortable with IRS audits, know what they're looking for, and a lot of it is presenting your case and the documents in the best possible way to the agent to make their job easy. You don't want to present a disorganized mess of receipts. You want very clean documents organized so that it makes it easy for the IRS agent to do their job. It's still not cheap to have a tax attorney represent you at this point for an audit, but oftentimes it's going to be worth the investment if it prevents the case from moving further down the line. Say you spend, depending on the complexity of the audit, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, could be even more. That's still going to be cheaper than litigating the case in tax court. If you go through that audit process and for whatever reason the IRS still assesses additional tax you don't agree with, or there's penalties, the next stage is either you could go directly to IRS appeals, but often your best option is to go directly to tax court. So you'll have to file a tax court petition. What actually happens is that tax court will often send your case back to appeals to try to get resolved before trial. And this is a much quicker way to get to appeals, and it gets an appeals agent to look at your case soon, and you can hopefully resolve it sooner. Now, going through this whole tax court process, preparation for trial, going through a tax court trial, this is going to be the most expensive option of all of them, costing tens of thousands of dollars to represent you. But if you have a large tax issue, then this investment is often worth it to challenge it. If the IRS is saying you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars, then you need to make your case in court. Otherwise, the IRS is going to come after you for that entire amount and start collecting as soon as the assessment is done and final. This is why it pays to start at the very beginning, getting a tax attorney involved as soon as possible, because oftentimes a great response to an IRS notice that's very detailed and lays out why the IRS is incorrect, or methodically handling an IRS audit to minimize the scope, show the IRS agent exactly what they want and why your positions are correct on the return. This is much cheaper than having to move all the way down the line to tax court. Now, sometimes tax court isn't avoidable. It's what you must do to fix your tax case. but I help taxpayers as much as possible resolve their cases before going to court. Although I'm an attorney and I don't mind going to court, I'd much rather you, as the business owner, save time and money and go back to focusing on running your own business rather than paying me more attorney's fees to draw out a lengthy process. So, when you get an IRS notice in the mail, first of all, don't panic. If the IRS is actually correct, maybe you just forgot to put some income on a return, then just be done with it, pay it, and move on. But if the IRS is incorrect, definitely reach out to a tax attorney or other tax professional to draft a compelling response to the notice, complete with documentation for why the IRS is wrong. If it moves into an audit or audit's the first step, then definitely reach out to have a professional represent you, like I said, to minimize the scope of the audit and hopefully show the IRS agent what they need in a clear, easy to understand manner. That way it doesn't move on to tax court. But if you have to go to tax court, I'm here to help. But you can benefit from having a tax attorney like me involved before tax court. Just because I can go to tax court doesn't mean I have to, and it's the best option. But it helps getting a tax attorney involved early because I can be involved throughout the process and then start preparing the case for tax court in the eventuality that we have to go there. But if not, then you get your IRS issue resolved without having to pay higher fees. The bottom line is this: tax problems are often like medical problems. The earlier you catch them, whether it's an illness or disease, generally the cheaper and easier it is to treat. So while IRS notices are often scary, they're still manageable and it's easy to resolve them at the very beginning. So don't let a small few $1,000 problem become an issue that costs tens of thousands of dollars to fix. Definitely respond promptly and get professional help when you need it because the IRS isn't going anywhere, and the longer you wait, more penalty and interest accrues. Thanks so much for watching. If I can ever help with wherever you are in the stage of dealing with an IRS dispute, feel free to reach out, leave a comment, or visit my website and contact me. And thanks so much for watching. And remember, when it comes to dealing with the IRS, time is often literally money. You want to get issues resolved sooner rather than later.